Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Let's face it, the future is now. We're living in a connected cyber society, and we need to stop ignoring it or pretending that it's not affecting us. Join us as we explore how humanity arrived at this current state of digital reality and what it means to live amongst so much technology and data. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Black Cloak provides concierge cybersecurity protection to corporate executives and high net worth individuals to protect against hacking, reputational loss, financial loss, and the impact of a corporate data breach. Learn more at blackcloak.io. BugCrowd's award-winning platform combines actionable contextual intelligence with the skill and experience of the world's most elite hackers to help leading organizations identify and fix vulnerabilities, protect customers, and make the digitally connected world a safer place. Learn more at bugcrowd.com. Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com.
And here we go, Brian. This is who is with me today. I'm going to let him introduce himself really soon. But as usual, disclaimer is you're watching the video, there is an audio version. You want to carry it with you in the car when you walk the dog, you can do that. And if you're listening to the audio and you want to see us, no, not much, but we're not doing crazy stuff. But, maybe you enjoy more watching two people having a conversation. It's Redefining Society Podcast, where we talk about society, technology and society, and how they work, obviously, in synergy together in the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, we're screwed. So I hope that's not the case. But today, nothing new. It's in every newspaper. Everybody's talking about Chat GPT. This is what we're going to talk about it today. And Brian is actually passionate about the application that we can have in the education system. So we're going to have the people that, no, we cannot let it in the school. Kids are going to do it anyway. So maybe there is another alternative to say no. So all this said, this is stay tuned. It's going to be a great conversation. I already know it. Brian, if you can introduce yourself. I'm not even going to try your last name. Please, you pronounce it better than me, I'm sure. Being Italian, it's not going to fly.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Sathianathan. I'm excited to be on the show, right? I am the Chief Technology Officer, Chief Digital Officer, and the co-founder of a company in Silicon Valley called Iterate.ai. It's an AI drag and drop, low-code platform company that provides components for large companies. Like basically think about it like a Lego canvas where you can drag and drop software pieces and build very large enterprise AI-driven applications. So we work with lots and lots of large companies such as Ulta Beauty, Circle K, Jockey, many different customers using our type of AI software. So I'm very excited to be here, and thank you, Marco, for having me.
Of course, and it's like I said at the beginning, kidding. It's everybody's talking about it. There is many different angles. There is people that are scared of it. There is a copyright issue. There is now the Chat GPT in particular. Now with version 4, it has a visual input as well. So that's kind of exciting. Let's see where we go with that one. But then you have other machine learning application from, the DALL-E for images, and then you have the music one from Google. So people talk about content, copyright issue, creativity. Can we use it? Can we not use it? And I just had a conversation about the application in the medical field, which is pretty exciting. So in this case, I know you're passionate about the education side of things. So let's start with Are you excited about Chat GPT? And should people be afraid of it, or is just the usual fear of the unknown or what we don't really understand?
I'm very excited about ChatGPT, right? I do have the fear of the unknown, but I'll come to that in a minute, right? But I think what's really interesting is every once in a while you get a technology that is sort of game changing, right? This is what you sort of call the revolutionary technology, right? So if you are in the marketing media world, every day you see press releases of companies putting out release of their software, their hardware, their new gizmo, right? But what's really interesting is most of the innovation that comes out in these releases are very incremental, right? They're a small step towards something, right? And mostly marketing driven. But every once in a while, you get a technology that comes in that is completely revolutionary. It changes everything, right? So what happens is whenever humans encounter technologies that are completely revolutionary, the human behavior to embrace that technology and adapt that technology has to change, right? So when you have incremental technologies, on the other hand, the technology has to adapt. So humans would actually adapt it because it's a small move, right? When you have a major move, societies have to change, right? So ChatGPT, where I'm scared is that this is an area where societies have to change in order to embrace it and adapt it. If not, it'll just plow through most of these things, which is kind of the sad part of it, right? But at the same time, as in the humans, over our evolution, we've changed a lot. I mean, we've gone from like steam engines to crazy industrial revolution stuff to computing technologies to quantum but as you look at the rate of innovation, right, we are in this curve of exponential innovation that keeps on happening, right? ChatGPT kind of hits it to like a sort of a straight line up, right? So you're suddenly having infinite up, right? It's really interesting because that also means across every industry, leaders and consumers have to think about how it's going to affect them and have to make the changes, right? It's not just only on education. I'll give you some classic examples. I was sitting with a friend of mine this over the weekend, and he's a mathematics PhD in a university in New York. He was actually asking ChatGPT like very difficult grad school mathematical proof questions, right? One of the questions we gave is like, can you actually prove that sine x squared is not uniformly continuous? That means it's an equation that goes on like that, right? Can you prove that? And it was amazing. It did like a fabulous proof, right? So the answers that it's giving, because it has access to so much literature and it is processing so much a human brain cannot process, it's coming up with like really intuitive answers. Across every field, in medical science, insurance, banking, you're looking at like retail, especially a lot in retail, in education, right? So as it's doing its thing, we have to, as humans, have to figure out methods on how are we going to embrace it? What are the restrictions we are going to put on it, right? And how are we going to change our lifestyle to meet it, right? I mean, look about the software development industry, right? Over the weekend, I generated a full web application, a front end and a back end, right? All in ChatGPT, because ChatGPT, even GPT-4 today, cannot build full applications, entire suite of apps. But guess what? If you have engineering background, you can break the app in your mind into pieces, and you can say, generate this piece for me, generate this piece for me, this piece for me, this piece for me.
I like that you said that, because I'm more into the writing, the creative, the content creation, and all of that, and I was like playing with the same block idea, because I can't feed more than 15 minutes of a conversation. Let's say if I'm doing the summary of or introduction for a podcast, maybe even this one, I'm sure I'm going to use it. But you're limited. But then if you want to build something bigger than that, you need to kind of get creative and build that in increments. So that's really, really cool what you said. And it makes me think about this way to look at it. So it's a big cultural change that is needed. And culture don't change as fast as technology. Legislation even less, but
Yeah.
even culture. You said correctly, we're scared at the beginning of things. We were scared of cars, and then now look, we drive them. We should be scared of cars still, but we're not. We just jump in at them and we go. So I know that we will embrace the Chat GPT and all the good that come from it, but if somebody comes to you, and let's stay in the educational system, I'm fascinated by that, because I think you open the mind of the student. If you teach them how to use it correctly, the potential are incredible. And if you just say no, well, guess what? They're going to use it anyway, and maybe they'll use it in the wrong way. A little bit of guidance will be good. So what is your first answer to people that are telling you like, no, this is no good for the school system, this is no good for education, it is no good for society in general? So the denier, I mean, apart from rolling your eyes, which I normally do, but then what do you say?
See, I think every problem has specifics, right? It's very hard to generalize anything, in a one line statement. That's only done in political campaigns, right?
Easy.
It feels good, and then 10 minutes later you go think about it and say, well, that's not true, right? So exactly. I think the thing about this whole broad statements about it's not good, I think people need to step back and think about it a little bit, right? Like, let's take the school systems, for instance, right? ChatGPT is great education tool, right? It allows kids to think about new ideas, ways to create narratives, right? And it also teaches kids to interact with AI in the future, right? Because one of the things that's coming is one of the fields that's about to generate out of this is this field called prompt engineering. I was talking to one of my engineers today, and he saw some job posting somewhere. Someone had said a prompt engineer for $150,000 a year. The company.
It's already a job. It's for real.
I'll figure it out. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but he was telling me that he found a posting somewhere.
All right. Okay.
So it's amazing. So what it happens is that you are learning new ways to interact with it. We're not going to stop with GPT-3. You're going to have in 5 years you're going to have GPT-28. Who knows what it can do? It could do everything: music, video, images. Right, anything that's digital can be transferred to it, right? And then maybe there might be GPT-29, where it could even interact with outside machinery and things like that, right?
Right.
It can span across. It can create a whole series of industrial revolution, not just only from digital and content, anything that's digital, but also it could go into things that are non-digital, right? So I think the way I would look at it is like, take the school system and look at areas where it is a problem, and where it is an actual solution or an enhancer, right? For teaching and learning, it's an enhancer. It's a problem for homework, because even if you block ChatGPT in the school district, the kid's going to do the homework at home. And most parents probably don't even know how to block this thing, right? So it's a problem for take-home homework, right? It's a problem for term papers and term sheets where you are allowing the people, right? So I think the same issue existed in the days of calculator. When calculator came about, even in certain grades, you can't still use calculator. You got to still learn the multiplier table. But you have to learn the table, because if you don't know the table, then eventually your basics have to be there. But at the same time, in certain advanced grades, you can actually use calculator, right? Or in university, or like if you're calculating some logarithmic number or whatever, you're not going to look up a paper table. I remember when I was studying, we had the paper table, right? You don't do that anymore, right? So what's really interesting is you have to look at it in a much more granular way, and education systems will change. So take homes will be a different style. Homework will be a different style. Similarly, term papers will be a different style. But in school, like a lot of the existing school educational system, for example, if you look at the kids who are today using various Google platforms, right? And then like language learning tools like Duolingo and all these tools, they can begin to take advantage of it by integrating into this type of capability, right? If you look at a lot of the scenario tools, like simple things like teaching mathematics to kids, like multiplying two numbers, and they do all these animations, but those animations are fixed, right? And then you have to write code to actually respond to how the kid is learning. With ChatGPT type system, that could be real time. It could interact with the kid much more and customize the learning for that child, right? So a lot of those things, like people can build really powerful applications on top of what's already there, right? So you have to look at it at a granular level. Like if I am talking about education, first I need to ask the question, what grade is it, right? What are the 8 or 9 steps that are involved? Where is it a problem, and where is it's an enhancer, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's an enhancer, as an educator, the person should think about how to enhance it. And then the other I would also encourage is the school systems and administrators should actually spend more time in learning these things and kind of get ahead of it and not be laggards in it.
I mean, that's so true. And I have been having this kind of conversation for the past, I think, 5-8 years since when we started ITSP Magazine. And one thing that has become kind of like my signature question is, who is educating the educators? Because the gap that we had in the technology, we can talk about cybersecurity, how to use the internet, how to figure out if it's fake news or if it's news manipulation or whatever it is. It all comes down to, can you spot the issue? Can you do that as a kid? But if nobody's teaching you, if the parents don't know anything about it, if the teacher don't know anything about it, then we find ourselves with a gap that is increasing constantly. So I completely agree with you. I mean, it should be, before you even say, I don't want it in the class, try to understand it, because maybe if you do try to understand it, you'll see some of these angles. And customized education, it's big. And I think AI can absolutely help resolve in this. So what other application can you think on top of your head for? Maybe there is the both. Let's look at both sides. Like, how can teacher use it, and how can kids use it properly? Not just by try to cheat and say, just write the entire paper for me.
Yeah. See, I think teachers can use it in many ways. I mean, eventually, of course, the in its base form as the Chat GPT, just the chat, it may have limited usage, but eventually educational applications, like, if you want to create a teaching lesson, create a lesson plan, right? There could be applications, lesson plan creation applications that could integrate Chat GPT underneath. So you could actually automatically build worksheets and lesson plan sheets in a much more easy, because certain times it's like time consuming work for teachers, and they could generate it, validate it, fix the things they want to change, and then you could get better generated summaries and content. The other area I think might also be interesting is there could be eventually correction tools, article reading and correction tools for teachers powered by ChatGPT. Because imagine you're a teacher, most teachers, and in fact, my wife's a teacher. She's a first grade teacher.
Okay.
There's a lot of teachers.
So you have that.
Yeah, so I have this at home, and also she has a lot of teacher friends who are at different grade levels, right? Teachers, a lot of people don't give credit to teachers, is that just like engineers and executives, they carry their work wherever they go. So we would go into a vacation, and my wife comes with a stack of papers, right? With these are all corrections, like a little one first grade year old, papers, right? But what's really interesting is in the future there could be, especially for high school teachers with lots of like term papers they need to evaluate, there could be applications that will allow them to highlight certain things, right? So that today, if you look at GPT-4, I think it's like based on what I read, it's the top 10 pass the bar exam in top 10%, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of legal contract, you can paste the contract and say, it's all prompt engineering, right? You have to learn how to interact with AI. You can paste the clause and say, hey, tell me how it's being written, what is the, which parties do it benefit, what are the risks, what are the threats, and it could answer things, so that so like that, teacher correction tools might be interesting for teachers, right? To evaluate term papers and things like that, because each term paper is about like 20-30 pages. So reading that across 30 kids is like reading 900 pages, right?
And I people need to think that way, because I think the people that deny it and they criticize it in the togetherness, in the whole thing, and say just like a big no, it's because they think that the the Chat GPT or any other artificial intelligence machine learning application is going to be the solution. It's going to be the final product. Let's see if you agree with my way of thinking, and maybe that will help the audience understand as well. So if instead we look at it as a tool that is allow you to focus on something of a higher level, that, let's be honest, it's not the most creative machine. It's not being creative. It's pre-trained transformer, so it's generated things in a very, I'm not going to say mechanical way, but doesn't really know what it's writing. It's not conscious, right? So that's the big difference. But if we think about all the application that can say, you know what, if it's going to just screen, as you say, the homework, and then it highlights certain issue, it doesn't mean that you're letting the Chat GPT give a grade to the paper. You just being suggested where you could put your attention, and then you're the final person. You're the one in control.
Yeah,
and that's the fear, right?
Spell correctors, right? We all use Grammarly. Even schools use Grammarly, right?
Exactly.
This is a more advanced version of some of those things where it can bring in that idea of like helping people in a much more effective way, right?
Exactly.
And
research too. I mean, on the other side, if the student know how to use it for research, not to try to write the entire paper, then that's great. They learn more. I think they learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that's also interesting is, like, I think you mentioned a really interesting point, which is today, the way we interact, either educators or enterprise executives or even consumers, the way we interact with ChatGPT today is going to OpenAI GPT, and then we are a prompt, right? And we give it prompts. But tomorrow, you will actually see lots of applications that are already integrated with ChatGPT. ChatGPT becomes sort of like the electricity. It's sort of in everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So like for all the applications, if you look at what Microsoft has released recently, right, all their apps and like the Teams. So you get a little summary in Teams, and you basically say, hey, what did I miss in this meeting? Bam, it'll summarize you. But you're not going to the ChatGPT prompt. It's built into the apps. So similarly, educational apps like Duolingo and various forms of all these from the little kids to the high schoolers. Today there are, like, if you are in a high school, you do get or even if you are in an elementary school, you get a Google Chromebook, right? My daughter has that. I mean, every child has that, right? So that Google Chromebook, when you open it up, you go into a prompt with a series of apps already approved by the school district, and you log in. The administrators control the thing, the prompt and the authentication. So like bad apps and unapproved apps don't show up. But if those apps that are there, they in the future will all be integrated into ChatGPT, and they will provide capabilities. Like your math teaching program will actually have ChatGPT capabilities, right, as you're learning. So that's why I think it won't be just the prompt alone. Kids will still work with the prompt when they're writing term papers and research papers, but there will also be applications of it on their individual educational apps, right? Same thing will happen in productivity office application, just like what Microsoft. Actually, it's kind of interesting because Microsoft now has a head start, right? I hope others get a head start too, because then it'll become a Microsoft controlled world, right? But hopefully, it becomes a very open world where a lot of applications will get integrated into this, so that people will use it, and at one point they won't even know that they've interacted with ChatGPT because it's somewhat seamless, right? So today, when you're in your iPhone, like you write emails using swipe, right? You just keep on swiping. You don't think about who's providing the swipe keyboard. It's a keyboard. Right, it works. Right, same thing with Grammarly. Right.
Yeah. And what I really like, it's to make the education system work better, improve. Right. I had a conversation with Mike Yates. He's a brilliant guy that talks a lot about improving education, and talking about not only minority and diverse group, but also people that need a different kind of attention, which is not just because you're neurodiverse or you have a different way that you learn, right? Or learning disabilities, but also everybody's interested in something different. So I go back and many years ago when I was in school. Everybody sits, 25 kids in a room, they're all listening to the same thing. And some people are going to be very interested. Some people already know about it, maybe because the family told them. And some people, they just need that extra help. So if you can imagine and put your futuristic hat, and I'm talking to the audience, and you have a one-on-one where you check your skills and you're given the education at the moment, the lesson that you need to catch up, you're not going to be left behind. So in a way, it is a democratization of the school.
Absolutely. It's a complete democratization, especially across the diverse as well as low income population, where the children, the parents don't necessarily have the means to help, or even challenges where the parents didn't go to school in the past. They don't have the base education to help. This could be a really great tool where the child could turn around and ask questions and learn. And kids learn. I don't know, my little daughter is learning, she's 9 years old, 4th grade, learning Greek mythology. So she wanted to ask some question about Sphinx. Tell me about the Sphinx. So we went to Chat GPT and said, tell me all about Sphinx. So it generated a whole article about. So it was a great learning experience, right? So it's like what a tutor would do, right? Sometimes even educated parents, sometimes they ask you about something, and you did. And the last time you can remember history and all these things so many years ago, you forget.
You need a refresh for sure.
You need a refresh, and this is a great way to a way to do that. And it also, I love this idea of democratization, right? Because the internet is a great democratizer, right? This is another step ahead of it. It's a democratizer of knowledge for a lot of people. The only thing, though, I think what I worry about it is that we got to teach kids. I think it's also parents and educators, and also even media folks like us, is that whatever you read from Chat GPT is not always correct.
It hallucinates.
Chat GPT can hallucinate, right? Or it could pick up a wrong information from somewhere, right? So validate what you do. So that's another part of the learning, right? So today, when you write a quote something in your term paper, you always say, you basically say, I got it from this location, right? You put a Chicago Manuals of Style, footnote, right? Mm-hmm. But then what happens is, you actually go and validate if that research is correct. Who are the other 20 people who actually talked about it?
Yep.
Right? So as long as that thesis is and that theory is fed into our kids, I learned this, but this is the base. Now I can go do research and read 20 articles about it to see if it's true or not.
Which is more like the college system. I mean, you don't know everything. You just go to the books and you get a source, but then you list the source. And if I'm understanding correctly, I haven't played much. They just released the 4. I've seen improvement in my everyday use of it, but I think there is also a way now. To look at where the source of the information.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's already a big improvement, which brings me to let's look at this from an ethical perspective. I mean, I say often we never talked about philosophy and ethics as much as lately with AI. Yeah. It's almost like a way to learn about ourselves. Yeah. And I talk to philosophers, I talk to professors of ethics, and it's amazing because we're kind of saying things like, well, ML, AI, they're learning from us, and maybe we don't know enough about ethics. So
that's right.
How is this going to amplify, in your opinion, the problem? Or is it going to be, as I think, a way to stop, pause, and say, maybe we do need to think more that
so way. What's really interesting, it'll amplify all the human problems, right?
Yes.
Humans today, we ourselves have so many ethical, challenges in terms of agreeing, right? I mean, I don't know, like this simple concepts, right? Space travel, is the Earth round and flat, right? So things that have already been scientifically proven have had a lot of questions among folks, even topics that are well established, right? So I think the thing is that whatever challenges that human society has today will get amplified, because the technology is always an amplifying force, right? But I think what happens though is that this type of challenges, short term, they are a problem. The amplification becomes a problem, right? Because until the right answers are found, and then the AI systems get fixed, right? So today, for example, the Chat GPT doesn't have certain political views. It will not say it because it's already been fixed into the algorithm. Eventually, things will get fixed, and there are more and more and more controls that will be placed in to kind of, and then the other is the AI will also have a self realization technique where, like, Brian's AI would respond differently from Marco's AI, right? Over time, they will get personalized, and and then the opinion it will say, it will have some sort of a legal disclaimer that says, Brian, based on all your learning, I think this is what I believe it is, right? It may not be true, right? So I think there is a bit of a personalization element that will come in, and then they will fix stuff. I think what will happen is, short term, we will have a lot of problems, but I think in long term, this is good, and it's here to stay, and it will help the human.
Okay, so let's finish this conversation with that, with putting our thinking hat and looking at the short term future, which we could even be a year, 6 months already, probably enough, and what could be, 10, 20 years from now. And I love to play this game. It's always the way that I like to end a conversation like this, and see, like, this could be where we go to utopia, and this will be where we go to dystopia, 1984 or something like that.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that? So you kind of hint to it. So beginning, a lot of problem. Give me an example or two of what you could see the problem be, and then
a lot of problems.
Where do we go?
What will happen is that companies could, when this type of technology gets, companies will suddenly realize some of the menial tasks, or even like workflow tasks that happens within enterprises, right, can be eliminated, right? The companies will suddenly start using integrated automated tools that could eventually create very fast job loss that is not predicted, which could create problems. And then, of course, there'll be an uprising against all this type of tools, people saying, oh, we got to ban this, right? Which is, at the same time, it'll also create new opportunities for prompt engineering folks and people who are trying to build, interact and use the tools better. So those are some of the issues. The other is there'll be a lot of press releases where people will, not press, media coverage, people said, well, I asked this thing to OpenAI and it said this terrible, horrible response. And it's, and you'll see a lot of that stuff, right? So this is not the right thing for the society. So you'll see a lot of those issues, right? And then I'm sure, like, we are also a very, in America, a very sue happy society. Somebody will like ask some question and somebody will die, and eventually somebody will sue somebody, just because of the nature of how society works, right? So many companies have got sued for false advertising, right? But all kinds of issues just because of how people perceive. So you'll get a lot of those issues. Then there will be a lot of ethical, there'll be a lot of challenges, I think, in terms of media and rights, which is going to create a lot of problems, because a lot of the traditional media contracts are written several years ago, right? 15, 20 years ago. And then this whole idea of derivative content, right? What is derived from what? Because media is very specific on that, right? You could create something that looks like derivative work from something else, and you still hold the rights to derivative work, right? So there'll be a lot of clauses in derivative work that will get flushed out, and I'm sure there'll be problems. People will be unhappy, lawsuits, and the lawyers will run around, and eventually they'll figure it out. I'm sure there will be quite a bunch of work that will happen in that space, because now we are only seeing the textual aspect of ChatGPT, and now we are seeing image capability of ChatGPT. Very soon, this was going to have music. It's going to have content, and then suddenly somebody's going to be upset. Today, if you go to OpenAI, you can actually see music generated in Katy Perry style, right? So the lyrics are, just random, like garbage, but the music style is using her tone, right? So and the other question is, so eventually media companies will say, oh, now there's a problem. Now, the middleman label issue is going to become a problem, right? Artists might say, well, I have ChatGPT, I have tools, I can do a lot of those things. I don't necessarily need a lot of help from the middleman. So a lot of disaggregation is going to get accelerated, right? But I think what's really interesting though is in the a lot of these Chat GPT and generative AI technology, they are machines of creating average, right? So if it learns from everybody, it creates the average of everybody, right? But
I
the
love
human,
that. Yeah.
the machines
Great.
are creating the average. But you need those machines in order to do, because your brain you can't keep everything, right? You forget everything you learn, right? So this creates that thing that it solves that problem of identifying averages, right? But then on top of that, for specific creativity, I think artists will embrace these tools, right? People will embrace, and after a while, embracing these tools will become a common form, right? Like I mean, like for example, like auto tune, right? Auto tune. Lots of artists when auto tune came in, so this is bad, right? But so
It's
many
still
artists
bad. If you
are
ask me, it's still bad.
it's still bad, but auto tune still runs, and people, there are hit songs that are generated through auto tune.
That's one invention that I want to go back in time and take
And
away.
change
That's
it.
a different. That's a different story.
No, I know, but the thing is that things can over time people will embrace
Yeah.
things,
No.
whether it's good or bad, right? So I think there is a whole aspect. That's a short term, right? Like I think media will be one of those things that there'll be a lot of rocking that will happen. The other thing that will happen, especially with all these not recession, but high inflation rates and companies trying to get their margins down. The danger is like existing productivity tools, right? Coming up with Chat GPT integrations and a lot of workflow tools. If they come up with these integrations, now suddenly a series of intermediary things are not necessary, right?
Yep.
If an email comes in, you click on a button and it'll process the workflow automatically. It'll also create a lot of challenges for enterprise software vendors and suite vendors, right? It'll be really interesting. I'm very interested to see how that will play out. So I think that's something that we need to look at in the short term, and job loss and content right. Long term is going to be really interesting, right? Because one of the things I think I wrote an article called "The Tentacles of Power," is in terms of today's world is built by software. Everything you see is software, right? Like even the Zoom is underneath is software. The hardware is very minimal. This microphone and maybe that camera, right? But even inside those things, it's all software running it, right? So same thing. This is a way how software's power is amplified, right? And everything else, every one of these things, the mic and the camera are just like dumb tentacles, right? As software becomes more and more and more and more powerful, it'll actually pretty much reach out every tentacle. So what it means is today, like in the beauty industry, if you want to get a custom makeup, right? There are devices out there that you just simply take the color of your shirt and it'll print your lipstick on the exact same color of your shirt. But guess what? The color mixing routine and everything is AI, ML, it's all software. Underneath is a very simple motor that just rotates and mixes a bunch of colors, right? You go to Home Depot, right? Like you can just take an old piece of a wall and then they'll basically take a picture of it and mix a paint for you. And that's already there. But all the magic underneath is actually software, right? So software is like basically making very, very dumb hardware amazing. So AI will kind of amplify that, right? So what it means is eventually this GPT is capable, not eventually, you're looking at 2 to 3 years, GPT will have connectors into every possible hardware capability. So every hardware out there will become super intelligent. Now it's got, right? So you can actually, have, your Alexa could use GPT and do things in your home, right?
Wow, you just crossed the oh shit moment for me. Like
yeah.
now it's dystopian. Now you're
yeah.
like, oh yeah, oh god, no. Please.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting about dystopian and utopian, right? I think I wanted to my personal philosophy in this utopian dystopian. This is just very Brian specific. I'm not talking about iterate at this point, right? It's not iterate's philosophy. But I think a lot of times when we see like future scientific movies, right? A lot of times we see a very bad, terrible world, right? And it's kind of sad because I think what happened is a lot of those thoughts came from the old, religious and other type of writings where people actually read about, like a terrible world and there is an apocalypse and things are going to die and it's going to get destroyed, right? But you also have to understand, they were in a world where a lot of people who wrote those things were in a world where people's heads were getting chopped right in front of their eyes, right? We live in a much more a cultured society. We still have problems, right? But it's not like if you lived in 15th century, Marco, you won't even know whether you'll ever do a podcast, right? You may not even know you will be alive to this age, right? just because of how those societies behave. So I think as we are in a more advanced society, I think we should reimagine the world.
I love it.
Right.
Also because another thing that you may want to think about it, and you mentioned that the reason why all the movies or the books that are kind of like more dystopian is because if everything was perfect, there wouldn't be a story.
There wouldn't be a story, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And this is how everything worked well. And AI is working perfectly. We live all 600 years because we don't have diseases, we don't have pollution.
Yeah, that would be a story, right?
Okay, but I need a problem because otherwise, what's the movie? Why do I watch?
And there is no hero. If there is no problem, there is no hero. There is
no antagonist, nothing.
Exactly.
So the lesson is to try to be more positive, maybe, and see the opportunities.
100%, right. I think there is a more of a positive world that can be built. Right.
I love it. I love it. Well, Brian, I love this kind of conversation. I really enjoy the fact that we went all philosophical, but we did focus a little bit on the education system. And it really makes me hopeful that this will not create, hopefully, a bigger digital divide, but actually will fill this divide. And maybe it will be easier to give that computer to everyone, a way to learn and build their future in education in a much better way.
And also one thing before we close, Marco.
Go for it.
It will be really interesting is that, I think a lot of these large language models and all these large models. So today, OpenAI, it's been built by OpenAI, but there are also companies that are coming around who are actually building these large models in using open source, right? In fact, I had a presentation I did the other day to some senior leaders on how many open source competitors are there. They're not at the level of OpenAI because it takes hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So one thing we should look at it is there should be some sort of grants and funded programs to enhance open source based training. So there is always an alternative, right? So these larger companies don't actually create it as a wall garden. Because at the end of the day, what's a big enemy to democratization is wall gardens.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
And it's tricky because they call it open AI. And so you think it's open source at the beginning, but it's a company. Get that?
yeah, it's a company. I mean, they have certain things. I think the older version of GPT.
No, I know, but it's kind of like, I agree with you. I mean, if you're doing it, again, we could have an entire episode about this, but if you're doing it in the interest of humanity, then it should be probably an open source project that can allow to really get all the possible input and many players come into place instead of being controlled.
And I think this could also be another thing, Marco, that this could be just like, like it could be like an NSF or like one of those government society funded programs where you have models that are trained. That somebody like governments and non-governmental organizations make investments. Like $100 million, $200 million is not a lot of money these days, right? I mean, and the amount of money we are bailing out banks and all that stuff, right? That can be done, and there can be a much, much bigger open world that could be created by this.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Because I love the fact that which you love, which is true democratization. Can we create? Can we bring everybody in the educational field as well as every society? Kind of a level playing field.
Yeah, and put in the money into what really matters. If we want to be idealistic too, in research and even space exploration and all of that, it's like we think we've spent a lot of money with NASA, but actually the budget is really minimal when you think about what you spend for other things that are not as constructive as that one. But anyway, we're hitting 42 minutes of a beautiful conversation. I really hope the people are thinking about it. And another thing I suggest is, if you never tried it, go out there. You don't have to pay the $20 for the latest version. Just play with it, because maybe you'll understand a little bit more about, making more familiar this possibly scary thoughts that it's not somebody, but it's like it's an AI that is talking to you. And with that said, Brian, thank you so much. I look forward for more conversation. I'm thinking to create a panel to discuss all of this from different perspectives. So I would love for you to come back on the show with others. And everybody else listening, you'll find information and links to Brian in the notes for the episode, and links to social media and transcript that will be done probably by an AI. So get ready for that. If it's not correct, blame it. Don't blame me. All right, Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco, for having me. Thank you. Thanks again. Take care.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com. BugCrowd's award-winning platform combines actionable contextual intelligence with the skill and experience of the world's most elite hackers to help leading organizations identify and fix vulnerabilities, protect customers, and make the digitally connected world a safer place. Learn more at bugcrowd.com. Black Cloak provides concierge cybersecurity protection to corporate executives and high net worth individuals to protect against hacking, reputational loss, financial loss, and the impacts of a corporate data breach. Learn more at blackcloak.io.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.